球ってどんなスポーツですか？
I think it was that one sport they played in Fully Cooley. Yeah, close enough. I mean, we all know that Sora would excel at it. We opened this week with all of the sports clubs yet again trying to recruit Sora, which, if you forgot was a thing, I wouldn't blame you, as it has been a hot minute since these girls have been in school. Anyway, while they were rightfully driven away since they were mobbing Sora during their lunch break, the baseball team just kind of got a pass because, well, did you see the preview for this episode? And okay, at least they weren't trying to make her a permanent player, but rather a temporary coach. Though, as for why the team needed the Hirogaru in spite of already having won many games beforehand... No, perfect, I was just running off AAAs. Actually, battery in this case referred to a baseball team's pitcher and catcher combination, which I honestly didn't even know was a thing until I saw this episode. In this case, the latter, named Tamaki, had been suffering from prolific pain in her pitching arm and needed to rest it. Thus, they wanted to ask Sora to coach them to make up for her absence. She, of course, accepted after reading an old passage from her hero notes. Oh yeah, we haven't seen that little book in a while now, haven't we? Then again, in spite of basically being the title character of the show, Sora's been kind of fading into the background ever since the end of the Batamonda arc. Yeah, more on that later. For now, they also had to teach their coach at least the basics of the sport, which if it were anyone else, it would feel like a needless time sink. But of course, athletics was her forte, and honestly, I'm just glad this episode highlighted this rather than needlessly turning Sora into an idiot heroine like previous filler episodes. Not knowing an Earth sport is perfectly justified, and her learning it quick makes sense, so it's all good. From there, and after a pretty funny Mondo cameo, we got a pretty standard
a sports training montage.
Granted, at least it had some pretty good music behind it. Later, we learned more about Tamaki and her partner, in more ways than one, Kaname.
玉木が練習もできないんじゃ優勝は難しいかもって。
Fun fact, her VA is married to fellow actor Tsubasa Yonaga, who's played characters like Aichi Sendo.
今ここに権限せよ僕の未来
Yeah, the wife has the manlier voice. But yeah, the two had a nice relationship, with Kaname fully backing Tamaki when she decided to step down for a little while. And yeah, pretty obviously, there were supposed to be parallels between these two and our main duo for this show. Thus, I guess it was only appropriate that they needed a depression arc.
玉木さんの肘は手術が必要です。
Don't worry, I know a guy who can fix you up in no time, and you won't even need health insurance. Yep, might want to get some life insurance just in case. But yeah, Tamaki had strained her arm to the point that she needed surgery, and while she would eventually recover, it would put her on the shelf indefinitely. Thus, she wanted to at least participate in their next tournament before her operation, but of course that would risk permanent damage in that case, which Kaname barred her from doing. Ironically though, she was also one of the main reasons Tamaki wanted to play in the game, as she was a senior set to graduate by the end of the year, which would likely be at least before she fully recovered. Kaname herself later suggested that she was also feeling the pressure of being their team's ace. Now, this is all decent drama for a sports anime, but I feel like we're forgetting something. Oh yeah, wrong genre. I mean, I'm not saying they can't blend genres, hell, this franchise has done that a lot, but at the same time, it does feel like they're playing things way too straight, rather than having fun with it like in previous seasons. Worst of all is that it is kind of taking focus off of our spotlight cure. I mean, sure, Sora is learning lessons alongside this team, but it's not really highlighting or fleshing out her character in new ways, which she has been kind of lacking in for much of the third quarter of this series. Case in point, the baseball team's drama took even more of a center stage when Tamaki had run away from the hospital. The Precure split up to look for her, and Sora ended up finding her on their school's training grounds. And again, decent drama and everything, but I kind of feel like we should be focusing a little more on our main characters. Thus, I guess Skeerhead decided to help with that. Also, a little side note, but last week I mispronounced this new monster type as the Choborg rather than the Kyoborg, because I swear I thought that's what it said. Plus, Cho does mean super, which is a bit of a common word they use for powered up monsters in this franchise, but no, that's not the case, so my mistake. This forced Sora to transform in front of Tamaki, which was kind of glossed over, or at least not given quite as much significance as I think it needed. Anyway, while protecting Tamaki, Sora tried to impart encouraging words to her by calling back to the 5th episode and wait, didn't we already do this? And calling back to the 5th episode here was very appropriate, as the positions had been kind of reversed. I mean, yeah, that was more of a Mashiro episode, but Sora was the one who brought it up, so this feels especially redundant. Almost like this very so-so fight, which while having a few interesting bits of teamwork, also followed the usual pattern of the Kirs winning after a buff from Agiha, though this time on 4 of them as if her buffs weren't already OP enough. Granted, I did like this last sequence where they played it out like a game of baseball. Though, I've seen better pitches. Later, after Sora rather easily convinced Tamaki to keep her being a Precure secret, the episode ended with the baseball team informing them that they had won their match before just going on to win the whole damn tournament. Cue the cheesy sports music. Inconsequential filler is inconsequential. What else really needs to be said? I mean, on the one hand, I do appreciate that we at least got another Sora Spotlight episode, and the baseball team drama was decent, but by that same token, said drama overshadowed our main hero girl, leading to more of a rehash of stuff that we've seen as early as just a couple of episodes ago. There's honestly nothing truly wrong with this episode, but also nothing you really have to go out of your way to check out. A friend who's currently on vacation in Japan mentioned to me that before this episode aired, they actually played baseball highlights on a morning show. I bring this up because a funny coincidence like that is more fascinating than an episode like this. And again, there's nothing truly wrong with this one. The baseball team's conflict was dramatic and even kind of touching at times, and Tamaki and Kaname were fine characters who did kind of cleverly parallel with the show's main couple being very close friends who supported each other through thick and thin even when one needed time away. However, in terms of said main characters, they really didn't do much new with them. Hell, they even ended up calling back to the show's 5th episode right after we just did that in a much more plot-relevant episode 2 weeks ago. Yeah, needless to say, we are very much in the spinning of the wheels portion of this series, and while that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing on its own for the show, it is still hampering the overarching plot progression, which was already pretty stunted. Like in Sora's case, and while we have gotten a few episodes to kind of flesh out her character more, her actual arc involving Skyland, and in particular living up to her hero, haven't really gone anywhere as they've needed to focus on other things. It's yet another fault of them not really taking the time to properly build the conflict between Skyland and the Empire, as Sora is one of the biggest key players in that, and not a baseball team. Thus, there really isn't much to this episode. Sora doesn't really learn anything new from the baseball team, and while she does teach Tamaki a few things, it's really nothing new at all. There was some pretty okay comedy here that thankfully didn't rely on making Sora into the fool, and more properly highlighted her fish out of water traits, but even with that, this was another very skippable filler episode that are starting to pile up as we are entering into the series' final quarter. I wouldn't say we've struck it out just yet, but that third out is getting dangerously close. October has now officially arrived, and for this year, we figured we'd do a few Halloween-themed videos, which we even kind of got off to an early start this past Friday with a top 10 Nightmare Fuel list. Honestly, I'm both kind of pleasantly surprised at how well y'all took to the list, and yet also a little concerned that y'all enjoyed it as much as you did, you bunch of psychopaths. Nah, but seriously, do check it out if you haven't already, and look forward to more coming this month. And until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and how is that even possible? We're on the 29th floor.